I'm Sarah, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my August reading wrap-up vlog style because I have found I prefer to do that ever since I did it in my July reading wrap-up, which I will leave linked in the description in case you guys missed it. Yeah, I enjoy doing it that way because I remember the books better. So yeah, we're just going to, in the near future, we're just going to continue doing it this way, at least until, I don't know, I don't like this. I don't think I will. So I probably will just keep doing this. Keep doing my reading wrap-ups this way from now on, but who really knows what will happen. As always, all the reviews for these books will be linked down in the description, so if you want further content details, further thoughts I may forget to mention here, so on and so forth, you can check them out down there. So, we're going to start with the DNFs, because let's just start on a bad note, because why not? So, the first one, I'm not fully sure if I'm going to keep this as a DNF. It may not be a forever DNF. That is The Pirate Daughter's Promise by Molly Evangeline. This is the first book in the Pirates and Faith series. This is a Christian historical series set in, like, the Caribbean, so it kind of has that Pirates of the Caribbean feel to it. We follow Skylar. She's called Sky. I think her real name is Skylar. Whatever. Anyways, we follow her. She is the daughter of a man who used to be a pirate, but he was stopped being a pirate a while ago, but he was still caught because of his piracy crimes. He was hung like a long time ago. She is now living in the orphanage. She's not cared for or loved by anybody except her best friend Will, and then these pirates come in and attack the town. They kidnap her, take her to the ship, and the captain of that ship is like, alright, you're gonna tell me where your father's treasure is, that he has only told, that her father told her about before he died. She has not told the soul about since, and she's just like, yeah, no, not gonna happen. And then Will goes after her with another man. They're trying to rescue her. So I didn't get much further than that. I think I got 35% of the way through the book. I was fine with it. There was a lot of repetitive stuff. I'm wondering if she wrote this around the same time she wrote Truth, which is the first book of the McKillian trilogy, because they have a lot of similar problems in the fact that I don't particularly care about any of these characters. And also there's a lot of repetitiveness of, like, we get on a boat, we get off a boat, we get threatened, we refuse to answer questions, we get threatened again, we get some kind of punishment, we're on a boat, we're off a boat. There's a lot of repetitiveness like that. Thankfully there's no repetitiveness of introductions, which is nice, because that drove me nuts in Truth. But yeah, I didn't really care. I was kind of bored. I was just kind of reading it, and I was just like, I think I'd rather read something else, so I dropped it. It has a lot of vibes of the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, The Curse of the Black Pearl. It has a lot of those same vibes. I would not be surprised if the author took inspiration from that movie when she wrote this book. Assuming the movie was out when the book was, when she was writing the book, there might be something like that. But anyways, this one is very much the same. But it didn't really have the pacing or the banter between characters that the movie does, so yeah, I just didn't really care, so I DNF'd it. The other DNF is definitely forever. I haven't yet deleted the Kindle, but I will, and that is The Rightful Bearer. This is the third book in the Maidenship trilogy. I can never say this author's name, so here's her name because I feel really bad butchering it, so, because I'm sure the way I've been saying it is not the way you say it. I DNF'd this one. I DNF'd this one at 45%. This is, like I said, this is the third book of the Maidenship trilogy, which is like a young adult epic fantasy, which brings in my first problem. If this is young adult, why are we having two different unmarried couples having, you know, intimate relations with each other? Why? We don't really need to put that in a young adult book, okay? You don't need to put it in an adult book either, but at least then it's like, whatever. You know, adults are reading this, adults are of age, they can do whatever the bloody well what they want. So, why are we putting this in a young adult thing and influencing teens? Granted, both of these scenes were extremely super vague, and it was like, yeah, it's kind of like I was guessing. I was just guessing by the clues. That's like, yeah, that's probably what they're doing or what they did. But at the same time, it's like, why? Why is this in here? So yeah, that is just a personal opinion on my thought, at least for young adult fiction. Unless these characters are married, it's fine then. As long as it's still clean. But it's fine then, because they're married. But anyways, I digress. There was also some, I just didn't really care. again, not invested in characters. I really hoped from the very first book, because I gave the first book 4 stars, but then it dropped off to a 3-star. The second one, I just never connected with the characters. I felt, what I said in my review, I felt very lukewarm towards the story. I just didn't care. I wasn't invested, didn't care. So I kind of just jumped to the end and read the last, kind of skimmed the last 3 or 4 chapters to see what happened, and I was not fond of the ending. I mean, it ends happily enough, but I was like, what? Yeah, there was a lot of things about the fantasy gods, goddesses, demigods thing that has been prevalent throughout the whole book. Mostly, I just thought that was a world-building thing. I didn't really think it would affect one of the characters in the way that it ended up doing, but I was not a fan of that. I was just like, well, what? And also, it kind of ended in a way that was, very open-ended, but it's, the end of the trilogy, so it was kind of complete, so I was kind of like, okay. I don't know. I'll not be keeping this series. I don't really recommend it. Next 2 I read, I'm just going to breeze through pretty quick. The first one was a comic, Captain America, the Fighting Avenger. This is just a collection of different comics, mostly aimed at kids, that follow Cap on his adventures. The first one is the Fighting Avenger, which I talked about in my June reading wrap-up. That's this story. Then we have this other one, which is from the Marvel Adventures superhero line, which is kind of like basically the story is Cap goes in to rescue a baby rhino from being experimented on by Hydra. I wasn't that fond of this one. I like the story. I gave it 4 stars. I'm not that fond of the art style. It's very much like the adult comics where it's highly detailed and stuff. I don't know. I just don't like this art style. But I like the story. The story I gave 4 stars. Again, the story I gave 4 stars as well. Again, but I've talked about that in my June reading wrap-up. Then the next story is from the Marvel Avengers line, and that is Finding Zemo. I really enjoyed this one. I've really liked these. That is from this line of comics, which I will talk about in a minute. But yeah, I really like this one. I gave this one 4 stars as well. Basically, Zemo is one of Captain America's prime enemies, and he kidnaps Cap. So then the rest of the Avengers have to find a way to get him back. And then the last story was also Marvel Adventures, The Avengers. This is number 37. This is this story, which I did not like this art style. It's very weird looking. I do not like that art style. And the story wasn't really that much about Cap. Yeah, I didn't really like how the way it ended. It's it introduced these other 2 superhero girls, of which I've never heard of, ever. I mean, not that I'm up on my comic book superhero people, but I was like, who are these people? Why are we focusing so much on them? And then, yeah, I didn't care for it. I didn't like that a choice was made for Cap at the end. I think it would have been a stronger story if he had made that choice himself. So I gave that one 2 stars. But overall, I gave this whole volume 4 stars because, yeah, the majority of the stories I did like. It was just that one it's just that one at the end that I would never read again. But overall, really enjoyed this volume, and I gave the whole collection 4 stars. Then I read 2 more volumes in the Marvel Adventures Avengers, which is, I read volume 1, which is Heroes Assembled. This also includes the Finding Zemo comic book where Cap gets kidnapped, along with 3 others. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4 stars. This follows the team. The first 3 stories follow different villains that the Avengers are trying to defeat, and then the 4th one wraps up where all these villains team up together to try to defeat the Avengers in the last story. I really liked that. That was a first for this series, at least that I've read. I'm reading them all out of order. I really liked that. Definitely gave the Avengers a very imposing threat at the end. I really liked the end story. That was probably my favorite, or at least my second favorite after the Cap gets kidnapped one. The humor in this is just really fun. The Avengers are just one big, happy, goofy family, and I really like that about these stories. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this one. The art is pretty good, too. It's detailed, but it's not so much that it's annoying. Which is why I find that mostly adult comics and stuff like that, I find that a problem where it's so detailed, it's just irritating. But these are detailed enough, but they're not so much that that's all I can see are the details. So if that makes sense. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. Give it 4 stars. Then I read the second volume, which is Mischief. Yeah, and this one we deal with Loki. And this one is the same format as the first one, where the first 3 stories are the Avengers fighting different villains, and then the end story is where they all come together to try to defeat the Avengers. The very last story, where all the villains are trying to defeat the Avengers, I like the best, and which is called Loki Laughs Last. And I was uncertain actually how they were going to defeat them, because it really looked like they were losing. I mean, literally, like, there was only like 3 of the Avengers left by the end, and 2 of them weren't even in the same building where everybody else was. So I was very surprised by the way Cap ended up kind of defeating Loki. The creative way he went to do that, because I was even confused. Not really confused. I was even wondering, what is he doing? How is he going to defeat him, considering he's the only one left in the same building as Loki? So yeah, I really liked that one. I liked the ones beforehand too, just not as much. I just really liked the end one because the result was surprising. So yeah, still really enjoyed this, and I will be continuing to find volumes of these because I'm really enjoying this series, and I really like the team they've set up in this series. So yeah, it kind of has a combination of the Avengers and the X-Men. So yeah, I really like the little team they've set up here because they just feel like a big goofy family, and I enjoy that. And I gave this 4 stars. Did I say that? I have no idea. Okay, and then the last comic graphic novel manga that I read was volume 5 of My Hero Academia. I gave this one 4 stars. We finished the sports festival in this one. I can't say much more because as I get further into the series, I really can't say much. But we finished the sports festival arc in this one, and we get a background more on this character who is, his name is, I'm gonna butcher this. This is Welcome to Sarah Butcher's Japanese. Todoroki? That's not how you say it. Todoroki? Roki. I think that's his name. I think that's how you say his name. That is his name. I just don't know if that's how you say it. I probably just butchered that. I apologize if anyone actually knows how to speak in Japanese, if I just butchered that because I didn't mean to. Anyways, because I really like this character. He reminds me of Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, but also differently. So yeah, I really like him. I have a feeling he's going to be probably like my second favorite character after Deku. And yeah, I'm still really enjoying the series. I gave this volume 4 stars. I started volume 6 as I'm filming this. So yeah, very interested to see where this goes, because the way it ended with like a supervillain on the loose, like trying to target and kill heroes, that's a very interesting twist. I wonder what things are going to go down with that one. So yeah, still really enjoying this series. The last book I have to talk about is, as I'm filming this, not even released yet. It's supposed to be releasing sometime this month. I got an ARC for this, and that is The Gods Lost Their Way by Nikki Chapway. This is the second book in the What the Gods Did trilogy. The first book was The Gods Created Monsters. I really loved that. It was one of my favorite books from last year, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I can't say much because, again, it is a sequel, but yeah, I think there's a time jump of at least a year between the first book and the second book, and in this book they're still hunting down the monster dude that they lost in the very first book. They're still hunting him down. He's very elusive, and the characters themselves are just kind of having some inner struggles of themselves, plus how they will look in the group as a whole when some of them are gonna be pardoned and stuff like that. Like, are we gonna stay together? What is gonna happen to our little found family? And things like that. So it's more, I have realized something with this series, which is that this series is very much focused on character development and character arcs. The plot is secondary. So the monster hunting angle is very, very secondary in this series. Like, because I felt at the end of this that the defeat against the villain was very quick, and stuff. It wasn't as drawn out as I thought it would be, and I think that's kind of the point, because the villain was very elusive, and the characters themselves are just kind of having some inner struggles of themselves plus how they will look in the group as a whole when some of them are gonna be pardoned and stuff like that. Like, are we gonna stay together? What is gonna happen to our little found family? And things like that. So it's more, I have realized something with this series, which is that this series is very much focused on character development and character arcs. The plot is secondary. So the monster hunting angle is very, very secondary in this series. Like, because I felt at the end of this that the defeat against the villain was very quick, and yes, they are chasing down this monster villain, and yes, he is a huge problem, but that is not the focus of this story. The focus of this story are these characters and their interactions with each other and this found family they've developed, and how that affects them and their monster hunting and their lives in the future. And that is what we are focusing on, and the monster hunting and this monster in particular that we're tracking down is secondary, which is why the ending felt a little I don't want to say flat, but it did feel a little lackluster. But that is why. Because the triumph we're supposed to be seeing is the triumph between these characters and over themselves and what they choose to do with each other and stuff. That is the triumph we are focusing on, more so than the triumph over this villain. If that makes sense. I still really enjoyed this book. I really like these characters. Zarin, he super annoyed me in the very first book. I did not like him. I actually liked him in this book. He actually has developed a camaraderie and a bond with these characters, and I really like that. Alia and Conan, they are the cutest. They are the romantic couple in this one, and they are the cutest, and why aren't they engaged yet? Because seriously, they need to be engaged by now, because it's not going to happen any other way. So seriously. Those two are probably my favorite characters. I also liked Icor. He's the other elf in this group, because Zarin's also an elf. And yeah, he was kind of just a crusty old fart in the first book, and I really liked his development in this one. He became a much more sympathetic character, and I really liked him. We also have a cat named Fluff. He's like a monster hunting cat. He had a bigger role in the first book. The second book, he didn't seem to have as big of a role, which, you know, when they were facing down the final villain was totally fine, because, you know, you don't really need a cat underfoot for that. There are also, like, necromancers running around raising the dead. They didn't really come across that much in this book, but there is mentions of it. There's things like vampires and werewolves, and also the very end, kind of like what this monster person has done to this one place. Could be a little squeamish for some people. Some, like, mentions of bodies and blood and stuff are slightly described. That might be bothersome for some people, especially because there's, like, a dead child among them and stuff like that. So be warned of that. This series does get a little bloody sometimes. I really enjoyed this book, and yeah, thank you so much to the author for giving me a copy to read and review, and I'm very excited for the third and final book of the series, which probably won't come out until next year, but I'm still really excited for it either way. So I've read some more books since my last update, and I read 3 more volumes of My Hero Academia. I read volumes 6, 7, and 8. So yeah, there's not much I can say about these. This cover kind of freaks me out, not gonna lie. But, yeah, we just further continue. They keep running into certain supervillains. They keep running into, or doing training exercises. They keep, yeah, just different exciting things keep happening. I did give volume 6 and 7. I gave these 2 4 stars. The arc with the one supervillain dude, who's this guy here, that was very intense. I enjoyed it, and I feared for everybody's lives while they were dealing with it. Yeah, and then we go into this one, goes more into, they're doing more training exercises and stuff like that, so that was really interesting. And this one's continuing those training exercises, and then they're going to a summer camp to, like, learn how to control their powers more. Deku runs into the supervillain from the previous supervillain attack back in like volumes 3 and 4, and yeah, there's a lot of things going on. The supervillains are kind of banding together. The superheroes have to catch up, so to speak, and yeah, I'm really enjoying these. Like I said, I gave these 2 4 stars. I gave this one 3 stars mainly because there is one character. I'm not quite sure how to say his name. He's this one. He's Mineta. Possibly, I have no idea. He's kind of a womanizer, which is kind of weird for a teen, but yeah, and there's like a couple scenes in here that I'm just kind of like, I don't really care if he dies, which sounds really mean, but yeah, so yeah, I'm not fond of his character, and he had like 2 kind of scenes when he's like trying to spy on girls and stuff like that. There was another one in this one, but this one is like really short, so that one wasn't as bad. These two were short as well, but it's just like frequent, and there's like a side story at the very end of this volume, which is like 2 pages or 2 or 3 pages. You can easily skip it. It doesn't really do anything, but it kind of talks more about like the like superhero women's outfits being like less clothing and stuff like that. It's kind of pointless. So yeah, you can easily skip that one. So I gave this one 3 stars basically for that. But otherwise, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the character dynamics and the superheroes and the whole learning to become a hero thing. So yeah, I'm still enjoying the series. This one, just because of those few scenes, I just decided to mark it less. But yeah, still enjoying it and will be continuing. Then I also read the Spring Edition 2024, the Clean Fiction magazine. Once again, this is a really good resource for like if you're looking for indie books, small press books. They do reviews of some traditionally published books as well, but mostly it's indie and small press. And yeah, I enjoyed this one. Found a bunch more books to put on my TBR because of course I did. And yeah, I even found a few books that I'd never heard of. Let's just give this resource 5 stars. Then I had a couple more DNFs. The first was The Glass Gate. This is part of the... I actually don't know what the series is called. Anyways, this is like it's kind of like a portal fantasy, has fae in it. It's a retelling of Cinderella. Yeah, I DNF'd this at like 47% of the way through, mainly because I was bored. Nothing really much was happening. It's like a cozy fantasy, which is not a genre that really works for me much. So far I've only found about 1 book that fits in that genre category that I even like. So yeah, its odds were very low from the start. I also did not like a previous like prequel novella that came before this one, which was called The Wolf Gate. I hated that book. I gave it 2 stars. Yeah, I just didn't care. I was bored. The only parts that were really interesting were like when our 2 main leads were actually like conversing with each other, but even at like 47% of the way through, nothing was really happening much between them, which was kind of weird. And also there was a tiny dragon and she was very cute and I liked her, but it wasn't enough to save the story for me, so I DNF'd that one. But I think this could work for a lot of people. I just don't really care much for the cozy fantasy genre, so yeah, it just didn't work for me. And the other book I DNF'd and also unhauled along with the 3rd book in the series that I had, and that was Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. I'm not giving up on Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book I tried by him. This is like his least known, least liked book, I think. At least this is one of them. The man has like 100-some books, okay? I'm sure there's going to be a few I don't like. But this one may not be a forever DNF. I may pick this back up at some point because there were parts I did like. I did like the action parts. Like, the action scenes were really intense. I really liked those. The characters were okay. I did like them, but there was just at one point, I think I DNF'd around like 129 pages, which was, I think, roughly 30-some% of the way through the book. And I got to this one point where they were just talking, so it was kind of like a lot of world building, info dumping, and then just like for some bizarre reason, my interest just dropped off a cliff, and I could not get myself to pick it back up without like heading in toward it, what I call like my resentment stage, which is like I feel like I'm being forced to read a book, and then I would just go into a reading slump. So I quit the book, and I just really had no desire to pick it back up like at all. So I may still try this, like I said, I may still try this book and this series in the future, but I would get it from the library, so that's why I just ended up unhauling the 2 books, because I don't think this is a series. Even if I did read it, I would want to reread it and therefore keep it, so I just went ahead and got rid of it. So yeah, hopefully it'll work well for someone else, but this is kind of like a superhero. It's more super villains and like dystopian type setting. It's a very cool concept. I really like the dystopian setting and stuff like that, but just something about it just dropped my interest, and I don't know what it is, but I will still be trying Brandon Sanderson in the future, just not this book series, at least not right now. Okay, then the next one I have is another superhero book. This is actually about superheroes, and this was an arc that I got from the author, so many thanks to the author for giving me a copy to read and review, and that is Her Fake Superhero Boyfriend by H.L. Burke. This is the 5th book in the Superhero Romance Project series. This is her newest release. By the time this video goes live, it may even be out. It's coming out September 9th. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. In this one, we're following 2 different characters. We're following Mira, who is a regular human. She's not a superhero or a sable, as they are called in this world, and she is trying to start up her own fashion line and stuff, but her extremely rich, extremely snobby, extremely horrible family, I wanted to throw them all into the ocean that they were sitting on. I won't give her any time of day. They think she's always just making mistakes and stuff. The only thing they think she's been doing well is that she has a superhero boyfriend. However, on her way to visit her grandmother on her very private island that she only opens to, like, the family, like, I don't know, once every few years or so, on the way to that family reunion, she ends up breaking up with her boyfriend. However, at the same time, she runs across KC. KC is a kind of a petty supervillain. He just does, like, petty crime and stuff to try to pay the bills and stuff, and he gets roped into doing this heist to go to Mira's family's, or grandmother's island, to steal this thing. He's just like, okay, whatever, it's going against these rich people, it's not gonna harm anybody, I'll just go in. He was gonna go in as a caterer, as part of the staff, but he ends up, when Mira sees Casey's ability to change his face, because that's his superpower, he can change his face to look like anybody, she hires him to be her fake superhero boyfriend. And things go from there. This was a really fun book. Author calls this series and her other kind of tag-along series the Supervillain Romance Project series. She calls both of these kind of like rom-coms with superhero elements. So if you like that idea, you like this sort of like cute romance with, but you want a little bit of action occasionally, this would be a good series for you to try out. I really enjoyed this. I'm not a rom-com person, but I do really enjoy this author's superhero books. I really liked both of the characters. They were very well fleshed out and had good dynamics. Casey especially I really liked. Mira's family is awful. And yeah, and her sister is the worst. Her older sister is just like... she is the worst, and like, And then at one point, like, the sister tries to do something with Casey, and he literally tells her to, you know, go to the fiery place down below. And, honestly, that was the first time a character's ever said that in a book, and I was just like, yes, please tell her that, because she is an awful person, and yes, that phrase fits what we should be telling this girl exactly. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Not a lot of action in this one. Some of the other books, at least, well, actually, I can't really say in this series, because I've only read one other book in this series, and it kind of had about the same amount. There's a little bit of action towards the end of the book, but pretty much not throughout. It's mostly focusing on the relationship, but yeah, I really like this one. The last book I have to talk about, is another ebook I read, and that is Pirate's Treasure by Austen Ryan. This is the cover for the paperback. The ebook seems to have a different cover, which looks like this. I personally don't like this cover. I think it looks too much closer to the rom-com faceless drawing pictures, which, can I just say, those faceless rom-com covers freak me out. I hate those things. It's like, why would you want a bunch of people on your cover with no faces? That is just weird. It's weirding me out, and I don't like it. I know most people think they're cute. I think they're bizarre, and I just don't like it. And so, anyways, it's a good thing I don't write rom-coms, because then I'd probably have to put that on my cover, and then I'd be creeped out by my own book. Anyways, besides that point, so I'm just going to use the paperback cover, because I like that one better. Anyways, this one is a time travel story. One of our main characters is Tress. She's a librarian, and she basically just lives in her fictional life of reading books and stuff, because she's had more than enough heartbreak between boyfriends breaking up with her and family drama and stuff like that. So she's just content to just stay in the world of fiction. Our other main character is Charles. He is a pirate in 1776, I believe, and then his crew goes to like this weird like place where like nobody should go because it's like supernatural or something like that, but they manage to come out unscathed. But this book gets left behind in his cabin, and when he touches it, he gets transported to Tress's library. And yeah, And she, of course, finds him, and she's just like, where'd this guy come from? And he's just like, why am I here? And things ensue from there. It's a romance. It's a time travel romance. I'm not sure what more I can say about it. It's a very slow-paced book. It's very thoughtful, and very heart-wrenching. This book made my heart cry. It didn't make me literally cry, it just made my heart cry, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't, but whatever. So yeah, it's just, I understood a lot of what Tress was going through with, like, her trust issues and the fact that she didn't want to fall in love, but she kind of was anyways, and just things that were happening with that and just how she felt. I really felt that. It's kind of mostly contemporary, but it also has the historical part too, because we do, we're back with Charles and stuff like that in his time frame. And so yeah, it's kind of a genre bending thing, because we have the time travel, it's contemporary, but it's also historical. It was really sweet romance. Yeah, I enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. So, guess what, guys? I DNF'd another book. I think that's all I've done this month. I swear this month has been filled with nothing but either 4-star books or DNFs. I kid you not. This is like literally what the month of August has been. But anyways, again, I'm cleaning out my Kindle, so I guess that's something. Anyways, that book is Frozen Hearts and Death Magic by how do you say the author's name, actually? Liteo? I have no idea. Anyways, it has a beautiful cover. Yeah, I really am not even gonna go into what this book is about, because I don't know. It's like a fantasy romance. There's like fae involved. And I really wanted to love this book, because from the premise, the cover, everything about it, it just screamed like something I would really enjoy. However, then I started reading it. And in like the very first chapter, one of the main characters, I guess she's a main character, I honestly don't even know. Anyways, she rescues this fae guy in the woods, and she drags him back to her manor and stuff, because, it's like in the rain, and I guess he's injured. Actually, he's not even injured. I don't even know why he's out there. Whatever, I didn't get far enough into the book. I DNF'd at like 24%. Anyways, she drags him in, and literally, like, after he's like fine and stuff, he asks her what she wants, and she tells him to kiss her. Like, I kid you not. Like, they didn't even, I don't even think, exchange like 4 sentences. It's so weird. Then we go to the second couple later on in this story, and they like exchange about 9 sentences together, and they're like madly in love, and they're like kissing and already thinking about, doing marital things together. Just really, like, actually the girl in the first chapter was even thinking about stuff like that while kissing the guy in a very detailed manner. It was so weird. I was just like, this is just like insta lust to the extreme. Seriously, my goodness, this was the worst thing I've ever seen. And then also to add on top of that, none of the magic made sense, because the characters like had certain magic, but then they like had multiple magics, and they were all, it was named differently, but nothing was explained. The world wasn't explained. I don't know why these kingdoms were fighting. I don't know why they like disliked the fae. They started a war, I guess. It felt very much like this author didn't even know what was going on, which is kind of dumb considering she was the one writing it, and I don't know what's happening with my hair. Please ignore it. I don't know what's going on, but this book made no sense. I was just confused, and also the insta-lust, and just like, they're constantly thinking about things like that, and they're like kissing each other after barely meeting. I'm just like, okay, goodbye, I'm out. So yeah, don't recommend this one. But the next one I read, I really enjoyed. This was super cute, and that is The Herb Witch's Apprentice by Irene Chow. Possibly, I apologize if that is incorrect. This is kind of like a cozy fantasy, I guess. I guess that's what you would call it. It's pitched as kind of like a combination of Jane Austen elements with the early 2000s Barbie animated movies, which I like those movies, most of them. Yeah, so I was very intrigued by that premise. In this story, we follow Amaranth. She's like becoming a debutante in that year's season in her kingdom. And in her kingdom also witches have been outlawed, and like magical people and stuff like that, they were outlawed because of something that happened in the kingdom a while ago. And then Amaranth discovers that she is half witch. Her mother was a witch, and she has magical abilities, and she ends up going to where the witches are now hiding to learn magic from, to learn more about her powers and magic and stuff like that, while also dealing with the like gossiping, backstabbing stuff of the season. And on top of all that, the queen starts feeling ill, and Amaranth at this time has been striking up a friendship with the younger prince, Prince Ash, and they kind of go together to investigate what is happening to his mother and stuff like that. And it's just a whole bunch of different things. It's really sweet, really cute. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was light, and it had enough of like the Regency type things of like balls and the backstabbing, gossipy people and the like really irritating people like Juliana. She is one of the debutantes, and I wanted to throw her in a blender and turn it on. And the Duchess lady who's like supposed to be teaching them. I'm actually not even sure why she's there, but I wanted to rip apart. Just seriously, these characters, whether they're good or evil, are very well written. So much so because the bad people I wanted to obviously do terrible things to. And the good people I really liked. Amaranth is this kind of nice mix of, she's kind of feisty and different, obviously, than her peers, but she's also has a compassion to her, and I really like that. I really liked Prince Ash. He was just an adorable little bean. I loved him. Her friend group was also really sweet. I liked the different personalities of everybody, and this was overall just a really, really well-written book. There are also uses of the words witch and witchcraft in this book. There's nothing occult happening, no occult rituals or practices. I think it's just the author's way of naming her magical people. She just used the word witch, which was an interesting choice. Because she even called the men witches, which technically they would be called like warlocks or wizards. That's the male version of a witch. I think the author just used that word to describe magical people more than they were actual witches doing spells and stuff like that. They do make potions, but they're more like herbal tonics with like magic in them. So I think it would be fine for anybody to read. It's no worse than any like Disney princess movie or even the Barbie animated movies when they have little bits of magic and stuff. So it's no worse than those. So if you're fine with watching those types of movies, I think you'd be fine with this book. It was really cute. I really enjoyed this. I started wanting to watch the Barbie movies now. Well, after I read this book, I didn't, but I did really start wanting to because it felt very much like those movies. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. It was super, super sweet. Really loved it. And I'm looking forward to reading the second book. I'm not sure how I feel about it being one of the villains, so to speak, but I'm curious to see how the author's going to redeem this character because she was awful. There are also trigger warnings for emotional and physical abuse in this book, but it's pretty light, but it's still pretty intense. And then I read another cozy type fantasy story, and that is When a Dragon Comes Courting by Claire Trella Hill, I believe. I apologize if that's incorrect. Gorgeous cover. Absolutely gorgeous cover. I used this for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge for the prompt of a book with a house on the cover, which I was very concerned I would not find one. But this one does have a house on the cover. It's gorgeous. This thing looks like a painting. Seriously, it's like I almost want to get a physical copy just so I can stare at it all the time. It's gorgeous. And in this one, it's a very short book, so I'm not quite sure how much I can say. But anyways, we follow Ro. She is a mother and a widow. Her husband was like taken away to go fight in this war against the dragons, and he died. So she's now alone with her 2-year-old daughter on her farm, and then these soldiers come in with a captured dragon. He is in his human form though, so he's not an actual captured dragon. He looks like a man. But he can shapeshift into a dragon. They bring him to her farm to they're going to take him in, turn him into the wizards because they're the enemy and stuff. But she is just so done with the war. And then through a series of circumstances, she ends up helping this dragon get away and stuff, and it kind of goes from there. I can't say much more than that. Like, the book's 72 pages, I think. It's very short. So yeah, I can't really say much more than that. I really love the characters, because then we go from that event and then we jump ahead several years. So then we also get point of view from her daughter when she's older, and the father-daughter bond between Rose's daughter, who I'm not quite sure how to say her name, and the dragon guy. That was so sweet. I would have preferred a little bit more on the romance side, kind of showing the relationship between the dragon guy and Ro later on, but it's a short book, so I just chalked it up to, it's a novella, and that's kind of just the way it is. So yeah, it didn't bother me. It was still super sweet. I really liked it. There's a trigger warning in the very beginning for attempted sexual assault on the character. Nothing happens more than just it's definitely just more implied that this guy wants to do things to Ro, but nothing ever happens. So yeah, he's always stopped before things get out of hand, but it is kind of, could be triggering at the beginning, because the beginning is extremely intense. So there's that, but I really enjoyed this one. Gave it 4 stars. I'm really curious to try this author's novels now. I've been really eyeing one of them ever since it came out. So I'm more excited to try it now, because I really liked her writing style and stuff. And the last book, at least for this clip, that I read was Sailor Moon Volume 2. I gave this volume 5 stars. I don't think there's much I can say about this. We continue on from where Volume 1 left off, and wild things happen, and we get reveals of, like, the mystical silver crystal and the moon princess and what's going on with that, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, and this book broke my heart, ripped it out, stomped all over it, and put it back in. This was, like, emotionally devastating. Oh my goodness. I don't even know how to I can't fully put it into words, because it would be a spoiler if I did for most of the stuff I'd want to talk about. But it's just definitely light over darkness, and a lot of things happened, and lots of emotional turmoil, and just, I totally was feeling what Usagi was going through, and just all the other characters, and just, wow. I'm almost afraid to watch this part in the anime, because I think it's gonna wreck me. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. Yeah, this book wrecked me in the best way. The way this volume ended, very interesting. I'm interested to see where this is going. There's also a theme of reincarnation in here. These characters have been reincarnated. So I know that happens a lot in, like, the Japanese manga and stuff like that. So yeah, that is in there too, which it doesn't really bother me. You know, the Dawn has reincarnation as well, so that doesn't really bother me. I really love this volume. I really love what was going on, the light versus darkness, just everything about it was just really, really great. Okay, so these are the last few books I read for August, and the first one is, I read Clean Fiction Summer Edition. This was the other Clean Fiction magazine I had, which I talked previously about a earlier one in a different clip, so this is same idea. I only gave this one 4 stars because I didn't find as many books in it that I wanted to try out, but it's still a good magazine overall. Still good. I mean, 4-star for me is pretty good. So yeah, I still enjoyed this one. Just didn't find as many books I was interested in, so I just docked it a star for that reason. Then I read 2 arcs pretty much back to back, and the first one is Chasing the Lita Light, possibly. I honestly have no idea. I think in previous video I called it the Luita Light, but I think I'm trying to make it Spanish. I don't think it's Spanish at all. So anyways, this is by Michaela Bush, and it is a Christian non-magical fantasy. This book acts as a prequel to her previous standalone book, A Dance of Rebels, but this one you can also read as a standalone. You do not need to have read that book first, or this, yeah, you can read this one after the book, you can read it before, it doesn't matter. They're in the same world, and these characters do pop up in A Dance of Rebels, but they're 2 completely different things, so you could you can read them out of order. Any like spoilers or contradictory things or anything like that. In this book we follow Elizabeth and Benjamin. These are two completely different characters from two completely different sides of the world. Elizabeth is the daughter of a duke, and Benjamin is basically a down on his luck pirate who's addicted to alcohol. But their worlds collide when Elizabeth's maidservant and her best friend is kidnapped and basically sold to this human trafficking ring, which is basically running the whole country. But Elizabeth has been kind of left in the dark about it, and Benjamin knows way too much about it. So they end up having to sort of team up to go rescue her friend who has been kidnapped, and things ensue from there. I enjoyed this book. It was very, very fast-paced. Like, I think the first time I picked it up, like, within, like, I don't know, maybe a half hour, possibly, I read almost, like, 38% of it. It's very fast-paced. The characters are still well fleshed out despite this. I did feel like Ben got over his alcohol addiction a little too quickly, and, like, too permanently, for such a thing like that. I know something like that is probably way harder to get over than what he kind of portrayed it as. So that was a little bit kind of like, yeah, okay. But it's such a short book that I was able to overlook it. But yeah, very fast paced, but still very well developed. There was also one scene where they're like fighting bad guys to like free these people on a ship, and then the bad guys grab Elizabeth and then take her down in the hold and lock her up. Well, the ship is, like, taking on water. It's, like, sinking. Which seemed kind of weird to me. Like, if the bad guys just wanted to get rid of her, why didn't you just dump her overboard or something? I mean, it's not like they knew if she could swim or not. So it's kind of like, why would you take the time to drag her down in the hold when you're losing, your ship is sinking, and why? I don't know, it just seemed like a really weird option to get rid of somebody to me. But whatever. Characters are well developed, the story is very well written, it's just much faster than A Dance of Rebels, and I will say the human trafficking parts, since we're kind of looking at the viewpoint of more the rescuers side of things than the people in the thick of it, like say in A Dance of Rebels when the main character Verity was kind of in the middle of the people who were captured, so she was kind of in the middle of it as opposed to these guys who were more like the rescuers. So it was a different side of the coin, so the human trafficking part didn't feel as horrible. It was still horrible, and still written as such, but it didn't feel as traumatically horrible as it might in A Dance of Rebels for a lot of people. So there is that. I still really enjoyed this book and highly recommend it. This book comes out September 10th. So it'll probably be out by the time this video goes live. Next arc I read was also from Michaela Bush, and this is a Christian contemporary romance. This is like a Christmas story, and that is Where the Last Verse Ends. This has a beautiful cover for one. I really like this cover. Yeah, and this one we follow Kylie. Basically, her life has not worked out the way she has envisioned it to, and she ends up crashing at her parents' place back in her hometown, where she runs across her ex-boyfriend, who, in high school, he just, like, left and never explained to her. He didn't even properly break up with her or anything like that. They just kind of parted on very strange terms. So, yeah, it's basically that story. They're reconnecting. She's reconnecting with her friends. Her friends keep trying to matchmake her with people. It's a whole bunch of crazy stuff. I can't say much more than that. This is only a novella, so it's very short. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I am not a contemporary person, as you might know. There's very few contemporary books that hold my attention, or just are even interesting or not the same old thing over and over and over again. But this book did not have any of those issues. I mean, it was kind of cliche, like small town Christmas stuff occasionally, but I still really enjoyed it because I really like Michaela's writing, the way she does her characters and stuff. The conflict between Kylie and Dustin, who is her ex-boyfriend, that was done very well. Second chance romance, I know, is not something for a lot of people. I don't really know how I feel about it. I've only read a few books with that trope, and usually it depends on how the authors handle it. It's kind of like enemies to lovers. It's like, do they handle it in a way that makes sense, or is it just stupid? This one made sense of why things happen the way they did and how the characters feel about it and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that. Gave this one 4 stars. And this book will be coming out November 5th. So yeah, I read this one a little early, but oh well. I also gave Chasing the Lutia Light, 4 stars. Did I say that? I don't know. Editing me will be able to know this, but I don't. So, and then the next book I read was also another ebook. I kind of ripped through ebooks at the very end of August and beginning of September because I'm filming this September 2nd, so whatever. But this is the second book in the Superhero Romance Project series by H.L. Burke, and this is A Superhero Ever After. This is the kind of it's a follow-up to a Superhero for Christmas. Is that the title? I think that's the first book's title. This is kind of a sequel to that, but it can also be read as a standalone, completely separate from that book. So, like, you don't need to know past history of the first book in order to read this one, but I would recommend reading them in order because it's more enjoyable if you know kind of like how the characters met and stuff like that. So in this one, our main character is Glint. He is a superhero and he is getting married to his fiancée, or he would be. Except the problem is, ever since he's shown up at the venue where they're going to have the wedding, he keeps repeating the same day. It keeps repeating the day before his wedding. And no matter how hard he tries, he can't get out of it. So basically, it's superheroes in a Groundhog Day situation, which apparently is a really old movie where a dude gets stuck in the same loop every day. I've never seen the movie, but I've heard about it, and that's kind of what people call this plot device. Maybe that the movie made that plot device. I'm not sure. I really enjoyed this book. I literally read it in a day. I kept thinking about it, and then I kept wanting to read it, so I ended up reading it in a day. It's pretty short, so it's easy to do. Yeah, and I really enjoyed this one. Glint is a character who, he does show up in the very first series of this entire giant superhero universe the author has made, which is the Super Villain Rehabilitation Project series. He's not my favorite character in that series. He's kind of an arrogant little jerk in that series. He's more of a side character in that one, but I really liked him in A Superhero for Christmas. He's just a sweet guy, and when you actually get into his head, you're like, oh, okay, he's not so bad. And he also kind of matured from that previous series where he was just acting like a complete idiot. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and seeing him try to figure out what is going on here, because he is the only one who remembers this day. Nobody else even picks up on what's going on. Like, he occasionally gets somebody else to, like, he gets his fiance to try to help him out at one point, but then, you know, it resets and she doesn't remember again. So he's basically trying to get himself out of here. I will say, Jada, she's a character in this book. I wanted to power blast her through the ceiling too, so I'm kind of disappointed he didn't in one of these loops, like just power blast her through the ceiling, because that would have been so funny. But yeah, she was an annoying character, and like some of the things she said would just had my jaw dropping, like, oh my goodness, can you be any more rude? But yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. And the last book I read for August was Rapunzel A Day to Remember. This is just a little chapter book. This is kind of set during the kind of what fans of the movie Tangled called the Kingdom dance scene, where they're in the kingdom before the lanterns are launched. It's kind of set during that time where Rapunzel and Eugene come across this painter shop, and Rapunzel ends up getting a painting lesson, and that's kind of the basic plot of this story. And yeah, it's very short. It's just a cute little chapter book, but I still really enjoy this one. Yeah, this one, I gave it 5 stars. I've read this one before, so this was a reread for me, and I just really like it. The characters are done really well, which is probably the reason I like it so much, because these characters are done so well, and some of these characters are not done very well in other, like, novelizations and stuff like that. Eugene especially, he seems to be a very hard character to pin down in writing, because either he's too much of his Flynn Rider-ness, or he's too, I don't know, like, just, he's too silly. I guess then he goes the opposite direction, they make him too silly. He's a very interesting, he's a very complex character, so, like, a lot of the times people, I guess, don't know how to write him, which I could understand. I tried to write fan fiction of Tangled before, and he is a very complex character to try to write. So, yeah, I will say in the beginning of this, the very first couple of chapters, there are things that are gone over, which is, like, due to the campfire scene before they go to the kingdom, they wouldn't be still having these questions about each other and stuff like that, but I do understand this is written for people who, like, maybe pick up the book to read to their kids, but they haven't necessarily seen the movie yet, so you don't want to give too many spoilers. Like, throughout the whole book, Eugene is called Flynn, not Eugene, which is what Rapunzel would be calling him at this point in time. So there's a few little inconsistencies there, but I'm willing to ignore it because I do know this is, like I said, a type of book that you could just pick up randomly and read without knowing the movie prior, so yeah, there is that. So yeah, really enjoyed this one. Has a lot of cute little illustrations, and yeah, it's just a fun time, and I just wanted to read something Tangled for around my birthday, so I picked up this book. And that is it. Those are all the books I read in August. I hope you guys are still enjoying this vlog format. I'm definitely enjoying more filming it this way. It's less stressful for me to try to film a little clip at a time and edit it all together rather than trying to sit down and film a giant video and then feel like I'm rushing. So yeah, I do apologize. These videos are probably just going to be longer from now on. So yeah, I do apologize for that if you guys don't really like the longer video format. I do try to edit these down as much as possible, but sometimes it's just, I just talk too much. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!